Oh, I'm here today visiting my parents' grave. I come to the grave quite frequently. I always come on anniversaries and birthdays. It's nice to have somewhere to come to lay flowers. I think it's just a place that you come, and sometimes I speak to them there as well. So it's quite nice to have somewhere physical to go to. I talk to them about things that's been happening, to the family, and it's maybe a bit silly, but it's quite nice. It just makes me feel I'm communicating with them.
I think cemeteries are fascinating places. Often when I'm off on holiday, I'll go into a graveyard and just wander round, because sometimes, especially from the old stones, you can learn a lot about the locality. In stones that have been erected in more recent times, you often find a line or a quote, gone but not forgotten, or where two people have been buried together again. And I remember one that said, "This stone is not erected because someone died, but because someone lived." That, in a sense, was celebrating the life, whilst also acknowledging the death. I think we should do all that we can to ensure that cemeteries are well maintained. When you see cemeteries that have been vandalised or not as well maintained as they could be, I think that's very distressing for people. And I think it helps families and friends to find comfort if they know that their loved one is buried in a place that's well cared for and well attended to.
It actually came to me in a dream one night. I woke up in the morning wondering who actually cleaned graves, and I visited a cemetery a short time after that and noticed several graves that were in a state of litter and overgrown and dirty. So that was where the idea came about. Each stone I do is I treat it with the same respect that I would anybody else. So somebody's asked me to come here and it's paying me to come here and do a job, so every stone gets treated the same. There's no extras get added in or anything like that. There's an element of sadness about it, because obviously there's somebody buried here that people have loved and still do love, so it's quite sad, especially if it's a grave of a young child or someone who's died tragically. But at the end of it, once it's done and it's clean, I know that whoever has asked me to do that job is going to be really satisfied with what's taken place while I've been here working on it. It gives me a great deal of satisfaction to find a grave initially that's looks like it's not had a bit of TLC over time, so to come and clean it and send the person the picture at the end, or have them visit the grave after I've finished and get positive comments and feedback from them, that gives me a lot of satisfaction. Plus I find it quite relaxing to come here, basically work in peace and quiet and get away from the stresses of everyday life.
A growing trend in recent times at a funeral service has been for poems to be read. Some of these are very good and very meaningful, but there are some which I think belittle the magnitude of death and what it is. There is one, for example, that begins with the lines, "Death is nothing at all. I am I, you are you. Whatever we were to each other, that we are still." Now these are lovely thoughts, lovely sentiments, but to me, death is a big thing, and I couldn't possibly describe it as nothing at all. There is a sense in which death is still a taboo subject, a subject that people choose not to speak about or perhaps even to think about. And yet it's the one sure thing. As sure as we were born, one day we will die. And therefore it would be a help if people were able to talk about it even just once, and to share their own thoughts and feelings, and not least their own plans as to what they would like to happen when they did die.
When it comes to discussing what people want done after they die, it's so much better to have everything sorted out, because then you know that you're fulfilling their wishes. But it is quite a difficult subject to broach. My mother-in-law didn't like talking about funeral arrangements, but we did eventually get her to discuss what she wanted. But it was something that she just didn't want to talk about, and it is a shame that it is such a taboo subject, because it is nice to know what is going to happen to you afterwards. Well, I think it is. And after all, death is a part of living.
From the research when I first started the company, there's a lot of companies who utilise pressure washers, and they put a small amount of chemicals within the machines, and basically it makes this process a process that can maybe be done in 10-15 minutes, whereas I'm going to probably take between an hour to an hour and a half to do this. Especially I'm trying to make it as personal and respectful as possible, hence the reason I use brushes and soap and no chemicals or machines. I don't want to come in here when there's people mourning and use generators and stuff like that, so it's far better to do it this way. Quite sad really that somebody's buried there, and I suppose over the passage of time everybody that knows everybody's going to die and leave, be buried, and that's it. They're there forever and there's nobody to look after it, but that's just a fact of life. I dare say I've got great grandparents buried that have maybe had the same thoughts as I do.
When I die, I would like to do what my parents have done, and they were actually cremated, but it's their ashes are here, and I think that's quite nice to have somewhere. I think there is still some room for me in here, so that would be quite nice.
I have already chosen where I'll be buried. It's away in Kintyre, the place where I was brought up, and next to my father and other family members, and it gives me some comfort to know that whilst most of my life will be spent away from my home area, at the end my remains at least will return there. I think we can learn a lot as we go round the old cemeteries in particular. You read the stones, you learn about the people, and as you learn about the people, you learn about the communities in which they lived and in which we now live. And it gives us a greater appreciation of the past. And I think that makes us better appreciate the present and to grasp the challenge of the future, knowing that we follow in the footsteps of those who lived here and who died here.